21st. I'd like to call to order the Lebanon Board of Education regular meeting for August 21st, 2023 at 6 o'clock. Everybody please rise and join in the pledge.
Right. Forward, arch. Colors, coaster, arch. Color guard, halt. Carry, colors. Brace in, colors.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carry, colors. Order, colors. Colors, colors turn, arch.
Thank you. We'll let them come back in. Hopefully. I think that was an all-new crew, right?
It looks like it.
Gentlemen, thanks for coming tonight and leading us through that. If you could all introduce yourselves, grade, rank, and what do you love most about junior ROTC?
I'm Cadet Technical Sergeant Eli Workman. I'm a junior, and one of the things that I love most about ROTC and the Corps is the friendships that you're able to make.
I'm Cadet Tech Sergeant Warrington. I'm a junior, and my favorite thing about the Corps is the community.
I am Cadet Staff Sergeant, not Staff Sergeant, Cadet Airman First Class Powers, and the thing I love about ROTC is the friends you can make as well.
I am Cadet First Lieutenant Matthew Butler. I am a junior at Lebanon High School. One of my favorite things about junior ROTC is all the people that you get to meet. The community is amazing.
Great. Well, thanks again for coming out tonight. We'll look forward to seeing you guys in the future.
Have a great year.
Mrs. Irvin, roll call, please.
Mr. Lane?
Here.
Mrs. Cope?
Here.
Mrs. Dalton?
Here.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Here.
Mrs. Larson?
Here.
Item number 4, need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 5, communications reports. A is hearing of the public, and we do have Wendy Reppert here today if you want to approach the podium. And state your name, address. I will tell you there is a time limit, but we'll play it by ear.
I won't go that long. My name is Wendy Reppert. My address is 2300 Butler Warren Road, Middletown, 45044. So thank you for letting me address all of you about an issue that's very important to me. I hope that you have all received my previous email. I appreciate that Mr. Sievers has been responsive even at this very busy time at the beginning of the school year. So the school calendar this year has a professional development day scheduled for Monday, September 25th, which is also Yom Kippur. And we'll get back to that in just a moment. So my children have been part of Lebanon classes of 2022 and 2026. They've been in Lebanon since kindergarten. So as a Jewish family in this community, we've had to adapt to conflicts like this for a while, usually with good results, but not without some confusion and frustration along the way. So some examples of these conflicts are needing to explain Rosh Hashanah to a school secretary who did not understand why I was calling my children out from school for that day. The absence was ultimately marked church. The perfect attendance policy at the high school that did not allow for religious observations. I can assure you it did before it got thrown out for COVID, because I talked to the principal at the time and we got that taken care of. And in the winter of 2022, yes, senior year for my daughter, we needed to get student services involved because of anti-Semitic remarks that were just too inappropriate and horrendous to repeat ever again. So yes, there's always work to be done. But with the aforementioned, and then on the district's social media page last December, on what happened to be the first night of Hanukkah, a Santa hat appeared on the school logo. And I have to wonder, in the past 14 years, have we made any progress? As my oldest started kindergarten, I told my husband she's going to be the only Jewish kid in Lebanon School District. But somewhere along the way, I lost track of how many teachers, aides, and other Lebanon City School employees had shared their own Jewish identity or ancestry with her and my family. So back to the Professional Development Day, on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. It's not just about one family's ability to adapt, but about more families' livelihoods than you realize. Even if excused from the professional development activities, isn't valuable learning and bonding and team building time with colleagues being lost? So I'm asking that in the future, for the benefit of diversity and our community, please do not schedule like big ticket items like prom, homecoming, exams, professional development days on minority holidays, be them Jewish or Islamic or what have you. Also, take a look at who's on our planning committees at the district level and each of the school levels. Are ethnic, racial, and religious minorities included or consulted? Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Okay, B will be the presentation of invited guests, Mr. Joel King from Warren County Career Center. You have the floor.
Thank you. Do I have to stay behind this podium because I'm not real good at staying behind the podium?
If they want to hear you on the broadcast, yes.
All right, then I will stay behind the podium so everybody can hear me. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening and talk a little bit about the Career Center and some things that are coming forward for the Career Center. So, Joel King, superintendent, completed my first year last year at the Career Center. Love being at the Career Center. If you would have told me when I started my education career in the fall of 1999 that I would be in this position, I never would have imagined that. And excited to be here this evening because that fall of 1999, I actually taught in this building my first year as a high school math teacher. So love the opportunity to be back in Lebanon and sharing about the Career Center. So the next slide talks about what career technical education is. And no one can say it better than our students, so I will let you listen to this video. That's okay. We can share it in a different format. What's going on in this video is students that are talking about why they chose the career program that they chose at the Career Center. Our students have an opportunity to do some amazing things, and I'm always extremely jealous of what they know, how they have figured out what they want to do, and what they hope to do after they complete our program. I think one of the biggest things that has changed in career tech is, and it's always been this way, so I think it's not necessarily a change, but I think a lot of people are really starting to understand the Career Center isn't you come here if you can't go to college. We have so many students that are coming for programs and still going to college. And that's what several of the students in this video share. They realized this was an opportunity to jumpstart their career and potentially have someone else pay for their college. And that's probably what I'm the most jealous of, is these students that figure out this amazing pathway and career, that they are able to put themselves at a huge advantage over everyone else that they're going to be competing with. If you want to go ahead and go to the next slide.
Well, I can cast from my laptop and you can hear it, but it's going to be from my laptop.
That's fine. I mean, if you want to do that. I mean, I think they say it a lot better than I can say it.
I've been able to use like a professional camera to draw pictures with.
I'm wondering if this is.
That's all right. I can share it with everybody. We'll share the video and you guys can take a look at it. The next thing we kind of want to talk about is, when you talk about the Career Center, I think a lot of people just think of our main campus, which is just up the road on 48 and 122. Fantastic campus. That's where the majority of our programs are located. But we're not just at that campus. We also have our Atrium Health Science campus in between the Atrium Hospital and the Middletown YMCA. So we offer adult program and secondary program at both of those locations. We also have, through adult education, our Aspire program, which is in downtown Lebanon at the One Stop Center as part of Ohio Means Jobs. So Aspire does adult diploma, ESOL classes, and offers a lot of other resources to people all over the county. In addition to the high school programs, we also have satellite programs. We have multiple satellite programs here at Lebanon. We appreciate that partnership and the opportunity to be able to provide those programs to students. Every student isn't going to come to the main campus or Atrium. We realize that, but I do believe that every student should have an opportunity for career technical education. The chance to be able to explore a career field, to experience those careers and really figure out if that's what you want to do or not, doesn't always have to take place at one of our campuses. So we love the satellite option for students. And then we also have 2 project search sites. So we're at the Warren County Government Campus and also at Otterbein for the project search sites. So this just talks a little bit more about career technical education. Really what career tech is, when people ask, and you kind of think of those traditional career tech programs like welding and construction, electrical trades, but we have so much more to offer students. Really what it comes down to is that hands-on experience, so that students understand this is what the career expectation is going to be. And then we always work towards industry recognized credentials or licenses for students. And the purpose for that is to have the verified technical skills. Easiest way I can think of this is if you think about someone responding to an accident. The people that are most likely responding to an accident may not have a 4-year degree, they may not have an associate's degree, but they have a credential that says they have all of those skills to be able to respond and provide help to you or your loved ones if needed. And so that's really what an industry recognized credential is, saying you've been through training, you have proven that you can handle whatever situation is needed for that career. I mentioned the college and career piece. The other thing that's important to remember about career technical education is we're providing those jobs and those skilled trades. And right now it's something that we're all starting to see as a country. There's more and more need, and anytime you call to have someone come and do something, you try to get your car worked on, there's a shortage in healthcare right now, IT. We're providing those students with those entry-level skills and opportunities to advance in those careers. So again, since we have such a great partnership with Lebanon, I wanted to give you some of the numbers right now. So currently, for this school year, we have 179 Lebanon students at the main campus and 49 at the Atrium campus. And it looks like the numbers did not get updated for what we have in satellites, but I can tell you we have a little over 400 students in programs at the junior high and about 350 students in high school programs. So again, a lot of students that are Lebanon students are getting to have that opportunity to take part in career technical education. So the next thing is I wanted to talk a little bit about our bond issue. So we do have in November a bond issue to be able to partner with OFCC to build a new career center. If you go to the next slide. So what this is going to provide is increased student capacity, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the issues that we're having right now with student capacity. Adopt to economic growth. The county continues to grow, and if you look back when we opened in 1976, there were about 80,000 people in Warren County. There are over 240,000 people in Warren County now. As we continue to grow, there's going to be more need to be able to keep up with what's happening in the county. Another piece to this is expanding our program offerings. I don't know that anybody would have thought 10 years ago or even 5 years ago that less than 45 minutes right here from this location, Honda would be building an electrical vehicle plant that's the equivalent of 78 football fields. 78, not 7 or 8, but 78 football fields. The number of people to build that facility, maintain that facility, and operate that facility is going to be immense. And that's just the beginning of what's going to potentially happen in our region, and we want to make sure that we're able to provide students opportunities, not just on the high school side, but the adult side as well. So if you go to the next slide. So we have what I call a good problem and a bad problem. The good problem is there are a lot of students that want to be involved in career technical education. The bad problem is we don't have room for everybody. So we are right now at 100% capacity for this school year. We had over 800 applications for incoming students and only 534 spots. This has been going up and up every year. Last year we were over 200. Again, we're over 250 students this year that wanted to be a part of a program, and unfortunately we just don't have the space to be able to get them into a program. So that's the biggest need right now is we do not want to see students being turned away from programs and potentially life-changing programs and opportunities to get into a career. Go to the next slide. So just to kind of put that into numbers, that's basically 33% of our applicants for this past school year were not able to enter into that career program that they had chosen. Just to give you an idea, I mean, we have 30 spots in welding. We typically have anywhere between 70 and 80 students every year that want to be in the welding program. These are programs where students are going to be able to complete in 2 years. Actually, they're going to be able to go out to work typically during their senior year, start to make a lot of money and graduate, and eventually within 5 years be able to make 6 figures. So we really want to be able to get students into programs and be able to help their families and our community with what the need is. So what the bond issue is that OFCC has agreed to co-fund a new campus for Warren County Career Center. So the state portion is a little less than 25%, so that's the $21,652,908. And then the local share would be 0.84 mils. And so what that is that's the project amount of 67 million, and then because it's an OFCC project, we have to have the required maintenance fund. And for Career Tech, it's a little bit different. We have to have 1.5% of the insured value of what the project is for that maintenance fund. So that's what makes up the local share. If you go to the next slide. So typically then everybody says, what's that going to cost? So what that's going to cost for a $100,000 home is $29.70 a year. And when you look at that, the $22.70 of that is for the $62 million, and then $7 to cover the 1.5% maintenance fund. And that 1.5% for the maintenance fund can only come one of 3 ways. Our board chose that we would do a permanent improvement levy to come up with that 1.5%. So that kind of breaks everything down a little bit for you and talks a little bit more about the millage and the items that are on there. If you want to go ahead and go to the next one. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak this evening. This is my contact information. I think the next slide has a QR code that will take you to the website that we have that has more information. Our treasurer is here this evening, Kathy McMonigal, and I also have some flyers that I will leave that Esther can pass out that has some of this information as well. I know there's one more video, but without the sound. There's no need to go to that next one, but we'll share that out. They are really good videos, and again, our students do a great job, way better than I can, of explaining. And several of the students in both videos are Lebanon students, some still with us, some that have graduated. So I think it's always good to hear from those students. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Assuming, if it passes, when would construction begin?
So if the bond issue were to pass in November, and working with our pre-bond architect and with the state, we believe that we could potentially be in the new building in the fall of '26. So the idea would be to construct and design a building that allows us speed to market. So again, my biggest thing is I don't want to keep turning students away. So we don't want this to drag out any longer than it has to be. We want to get students into new programs as quickly as possible.
Then how many districts, Mr. King, are feeding into the Career Center?
So there are 6 districts in Warren County, and we do occasionally have students that apply open enrollment through those districts or come to us. So in the area, for example, Centerville does not have some of the programming that we offer. So typically we have students apply, but something we changed last year for this group of students that came in is we looked at all students that are a part of the 6 districts in Warren County before we would take anybody open enrollment. So unless after May 1st there were still openings in programs, we wouldn't look at any of those students. So actually this year I think we have less than a dozen students because all of those programs filled up with students from the 6 districts in Warren County.
Is the new building on the existing location, or is it a different location?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we actually own, and it's kind of amazing when I say this, we own about 160 acres at the site up on 48 and 122. So the new building would go on that location. The existing building would be able to be used for adult education day and night. So a lot of what we are hearing from business and industry is we have employees that we want to retrain or employees that we hire that need to get training, but because we typically only offer adult education courses in the evening, it becomes a challenge for those people unless they have someone to watch their children. The state also just started this year the opportunity to do what they're calling Career Tech Plus. So just like CCP, now a student that didn't get into a secondary program could actually take the adult ed version, and those programs are the same. So for example, with welding and our healthcare programs, it's exactly the same thing that we're doing with high school students and adult students. So it could be another opportunity for students at the high school level, but also throughout the community to be able to access programming.
Okay. Thanks.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Joel and Kathy, thank you for being here. I am very honored to also be serving as the representative from Lebanon at the Career Center, and I'm looking forward to the progress that is ahead of us.
And Kathy, I did mean to ask, did you have anything you want to add? No?
Yep.
Oh, don't tell him that. So. I've known Joel for a very long time, so I had to give him a little grief. All right, item C, student board member introduction and presentation. Alexa Lane. Am I supposed to introduce her? So, I will introduce her. Another person I'm pretty familiar with. So this is our student board member for the year. Happens to be my daughter, Alexa Lane, who's a senior at LHS. And very happy that she's going to be joining us throughout the school year.
My name's Alexa Lane, as my dad just said. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about myself and what I'm involved in at school. So I'm involved in student council. That's why I get to sit here today and at the board meetings in the future. I'm involved in a few business clubs, Business Professionals of America and Future Business Leaders of America. I'm also a student representative on Hope Squad, National Honor Society, and Spanish National Honor Society, and I'm also involved in Spanish Club, and I'm on the track team. So right before school started, the Friday through Sunday before freshman orientation, incoming seniors were given the opportunity to paint their parking spots, and that's just a few of the students who decided to do so. And these are just a few finished pictures of the parking spots. There are some amazing spots there as well. If you have free time and you want to look around at the spots, I would highly recommend doing so. So the high school offers something that I think is really unique and something that I think is super special that our high school does is freshman focus or freshman orientation. So upperclassmen and high school staff welcomed one of the largest classes at the high school this school year. The freshmen are separated into 4 color groups: red, green, yellow, and blue. And I may be a little biased, but I think red is the best. These are just a few first day of school pictures. This school year, over 1,500 students were welcomed to the high school. And we had a big Springboro rivalry weekend this past Friday through Sunday. Football won 27-14, beating Springboro for the first time since 2011. Boys soccer had a tie, which is pretty big because their soccer team is also really competitive, and volleyball took a 3-0 win. And then for just some home openers for the sports, the first girls' soccer game was August 19th, as well as the boys. Those are their Springboro games. The first varsity football game is this Friday, and you can also see the cheerleaders cheering there as well. Boys and girls golf are upcoming this week. August 23rd is girls golf, August 24th is boys golf, and they're both at Shaker Run. The cross-country meet here at the high school is on September 2nd. And girls tennis had their first home match on August 8th. And then girls volleyball had their first game on August 22nd versus Milford. Color Guard will be performing at halftime on August 25th this Friday, and then throughout the season at the home games, and the band will also be there as well. And then upcoming events, these will be happening before the next board meeting. So the homecoming parade is Thursday, September 14th. From 6 to 7:30, if it doesn't go long or short, because sometimes that happens. Powder Puff will be the same day after the parade at the high school turf field. And homecoming is Saturday, September 16th from 8 to 10:30, which is also at the turf field.
Thank you. Any questions?
Nice job and welcome to our group. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
We'll try and keep him in line for you.
And thank you for looking more like your mother.
All right, item D, superintendent's report. Mr. Severs is ill and not here tonight. We were going to hold off on number 1, biennium state budget update, till later. But Mrs. Irvin's going to talk about number 2, November permanent improvement levy update.
All right, so we've included some language here regarding our permanent improvement levy that will be that we've placed on the ballot for November of this year. This is the official ballot language that you will see on the voting documents. So $1.4 million annually. This is specifically for our permanent improvements, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But this is about $35 for every $100,000 of value. This will be collected in 2024. So Isaac did a little bit of research and found that this exact levy was first passed by our voters in 1998. So the amount has not changed for about 25 years. It's the same levy. We're just asking for a renewal, not changing this one this year either. This is a 5-year levy, so every 5 years you'll see this come up. This is not going to increase taxes. Again, it's just a renewal of the current levy that was put on the ballot passed for the first time in 1998. Back last year, we came to the ballot asking taxpayers to review the emergency levies that were currently on the books. And this is the graphic that we shared with everyone, the number of times we voted. So it's kind of hard to see these. These are pretty small, but the orange, the blue, and the green were all of the emergency levies. So that's every time we had asked voters to come to the ballot to vote. You see, we combined all three of those into the black. So 2022 and 2032 with the voters' blessing, we combined those. So those are now on a 10-year cycle. So three of our emergency levies, those are operating, very different from what we're talking about today, but those were combined. We won't vote on those again until 2032. So you'll see here in 2023, this red box, that is the one we're voting on here today. It's a 5-year levy. You can see from the projection of the timeline where we've really reduced the number of times we're bringing things to the ballot, hoping to really help with some of the voter fatigue that we've seen over the last few years.
If I can add to this part, so one of the things, the comments I'm noticing on Facebook are people are asking, well, why didn't you include this one? It's a separate bucket, right? The way the
Correct.
state funding works, this cannot have been included.
Correct. State law does not allow us to combine a permanent improvement levy with an operating. Operating is our general fund. It's covering our teachers, our staffing supplies, those kind of things, whereas a permanent improvement levy has to be used for capital items, which I think might be his next slide. So he put in here a few just specifics. Over the last year, we created a 10-year capital plan specifying year by year in the next 10 years the various capital projects that we have slated. These are just a few of those. So Chromebooks, computers, technology infrastructure, our school buses, we purchased the 20 buses. We're paying for that out of this fund. We have the high school roof, the pavement project, anything that is our physical textbooks from curriculum, those get used here. And then we also have our general building maintenance. So we already mentioned the roof, but anything major that happens in our buildings. That's what this money is specifically covering. And it also, this is a pretty technical term, but capital improvement means you have to have it for 5 years or more. If we keep something less than 5 years, it doesn't qualify for the use of this money. We can't use that money for something like that. So we have received some questions, and this is one of them that Mr. Sievers wanted to highlight. Last year, as we were talking through the substitute levy, we let taxpayers know our taxes will not increase if you approve the substitute levy. Taxpayers have seen the increase. So this was actually an FYI from last year that Mr. Nolan, our county auditor, had written out, provided to us, that tax increase was not from the school district. It was from the tax holiday. So 2 years ago, we had a tax holiday where the county waived all of their taxes. That just kept everything equal because everyone else is raised, but the county waived their raise. This year, the county took off that holiday, and that's mentioned here, and we paid that. So it felt like an increase, but in fact, it's just the holiday is no longer in effect. So we wanted to point that out. We have received plenty of questions on that. So this is just from last year's presentation material. And that is it.
Thank you. E is the board committee reports. Student Achievement Liaison, Mrs. Dalton.
Okay, I don't have a lot today to report, but school is back in session, as we all know, and all the principals have been generating their weekly reports with what's going on in each of the buildings. And just a few highlights out of the junior high is that they're going to work this year on trying to reduce the cell phone usage of the kids, of the students. And the hope is that they will generate more discussions with the students during free time. I think they observed that in just a lunchroom. They started playing music and the kids were all involved versus looking at their phones, which I think is a positive thing for just general communication and fostering friendships with students. So I wish them luck with that endeavor. I know that it's hard for all of us to leave our phones behind, but I think that it could potentially be a good thing. And then thanks, Alexa, for reporting on the high school and all of their sports that are in full action now, along with band and cheerleading and everything like that. And the other thing that I thought was a good statement from Barry is that it was just a quote saying something to the fact that you have 5 different classrooms, 5 different teachers, and 5 different ways to connect with students. And every teacher has their own talent and strengths to make them amazing. So I wish them all the best of luck in getting their classroom started. So that'll cap it off.
Okay. B is the CAC committee, Mr. McCutcheon.
Yep. Well, I have quite a bit to report this time. Our CAC meeting was moved back so we could attend the budget and analysis discussion in Columbus, which I did attend, and I'll get to that later. But we met on August 9th. In attendance was Tina Flegg, Bill Haynes, Chris Johnson, Mike Faulkner, Superintendent Isaac Sievers, our treasurer Karen Irvin, board president Mike Lane, and myself. We had 3 main topics. The first, we discussed the Legacy Project, which is the project to raise private funds to build our newer outdoor athletic and band facilities. And we discussed using the Warren County Foundation to handle and manage the money that we'll be raising. Chris Johnson, who's the CEO at Countryside YMCA, had a lot of input and information experience working with Warren County Foundation. And I think the committee was feeling very favorable about using them to handle the donations. It was pointed out that the board will need to approve the creation of Fund 029, and all expenditures, even though we're using private money, will have to have board approval. And one of the things I handed out before the meeting, there were a couple handouts at CAC. One of them was the Legacy Project, and the other one was about pay school fees. That was the second thing that we discussed, was pay school fees, and about the district passing on the fees that are being charged to the parents or the guardians. And I've noticed a few things on social media as well about people discussing the fees and the cost of the fees. And I can assure you, the school district is not making money off of the fees. We basically hire them, am I right, Karen, to handle that for us, as opposed to buying all the equipment and managing it in-house. And as a business owner in town, I completely understand. My business last year paid $24,000 in bank fees over debit cards and credit card usage. But I think the CAC committee people, we felt pretty confident that we did not feel the taxpayers of our district should be paying those fees. So is that correct? Was that?
I heard the opposite.
Did you think?
We talked about the alternative of, they can still bring a check in to avoid the fee.
Yeah, but we didn't want
Yeah,
to absorb it.
Correct,
The
correct.
school
Property
won't
taxes
absorb.
wouldn't cover, yes,
Yes,
sorry.
yeah, we
sorry.
didn't, we didn't want to pay those, because
Misunderstood,
it's going to be substantial with 5,500 kids.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. The majority of the meeting, Mr. Sievers and Mrs. Irving discussed the new state budget, the Fair School Funding Act, and how the calculations are made at the state level. We had a lot of handouts. I did not copy those, but I would almost suggest that we maybe schedule a work session, and if we don't, I'm going to come back in with Isaac and Karen to kind of go over that. And I know Superintendent Sievers was going to discuss this a lot, so I'm not going to get into too much of it. But it's probably would be beneficial if we had a work session to go over this, because it's extremely complicated. There are a lot of changes. I mean, I'm kind of understanding it, but there's some things that I'm not. Mr. Severs sent Mike and I an email with an explanation of the system, and I mean, I'll let him share that to each of you, which I'm sure he will. One thing I did want to point out is I did attend the budget and analysis discussion in Columbus on August 1st. Kind of my takeaways, I would recommend anybody that's on a school board to go to that. I learned a tremendous amount at that meeting. And also, I will say that Mrs. Irving is a rock star, takes notes, works, pays attention. I was just blown away by her professionalism. But I would recommend in 2 years that as many people that want to go should go. It was fantastic. The state is only funding, and I got a couple points of things that I learned. The state is only funding public schools at 50% of what they themselves require themselves to do by law. That I'm having trouble wrapping my mind around. Aaron Roush gave a presentation. He's the chief of budget and school funding, and the state of Ohio has increased spending on education in the next 2 years by $1.42 billion. Then Paul Imhoff of the Buckeye Association of School Administrators reported that only 24% of that $1.42 billion is going to public education. We also had a panel discussion with 2 House reps and a senator, which was excellent. They did point out, Representatives Isaacson and Edwards pointed out, when adding transportation, administrative, and auxiliary costs, the state of Ohio is now spending twice as much money per pupil on non-public school students versus public school students. So during our CAP committee meeting, we spent a great deal of time going over those numbers as well. So again, I think it would be a good idea if we could meet again and crunch through those numbers.
We can plan something.
Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. Legislative update, Mrs. Coe?
The one thing that I'm reporting about tonight is Governor DeWine just announced a new teacher apprenticeship program, and it's to address the teacher shortage in the state of Ohio. Many of you probably know teachers are across the nation. There's a huge shortage. But his program is enabling people who would like to become teachers. They would be eligible for a Grow Your Own Teacher scholarship. And these are people who are already in the schools, like perhaps paraprofessionals or library specialists, bus drivers. People that have always wanted to become teachers can now have the opportunity to do that. There is information on the state site, but this will hopefully help with our teacher shortage and allow many people who've always wanted to be a teacher to become teachers here in the future. So that was the one thing I had to report on this week.
I will add that we are not necessarily experiencing teacher shortage, but I think part of that is that our HR director, Mr. Dalton, got out early, got us interviews early on, and it also speaks to our district that people want to come here and teach.
Well, one comment with that, the number of applicants though, after
yes.
working with our HR person, we used to get hundreds of applications for a position and now may only get, a handful per position. So the pool is definitely much smaller than what it used to be. So we need to increase the number of people that are in that pool.
I completely agree.
Item number 6, approval of the minutes. Need a motion to approve the minutes as presented from the regular meeting on July 17th.
Did you want me to say anything with?
Oh, I'm sorry. I already checked you off because, let me back up. Warren County Career Center Liaison, Mrs. Larson. She told me she didn't have an update because.
Well, I don't have an
King, so-
update, but I'd still like to say that Joel King, our superintendent, did a great job tonight on saying how important career tech is and the different programs that are available for all the students. And I appreciate that our treasurer, Kathy McGonigal, also came and to support Joel, I suppose. And thank you both for being here very much. Appreciate you taking your time to do that. And I'll get the minutes for our last meeting out to everyone electronically.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, now, 6, approval of the minutes. I need a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second.
My standard question, any comments or questions, corrections on the minutes? Roll call, please.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 7, financial. I need a motion to approve items A through G. We're going to keep H out for now.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Mrs. Irvin?
Yes. Keeping H out, you said.
Yes.
Okay.
You said H?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. So this is something we look at every month. Just highlighting here, last month that green box was around 2023. We're moving into 2024. We finished 23, so we're now looking at that third column in. Come November, everything will shift, right? So the numbers will look very, very different as that 2022 falls off and we add 2028 projected. But as of currently, our May forecast is our most recent forecast. We're looking to end in 2027 with 2.9 million and potentially needing new money in 2026. So 12 months completed, fully out. The current operating cash was 177 days. I'm doubting myself here. I'm so sorry. Give me just a second to make sure this is the right PowerPoint. Okay, we'll continue. Target is 120. Right now, anticipated looks at 147. If you remember last year, we were looking at about 130. So as the year goes by, I think it'll be very important that we keep looking at this. We anticipated using this projection, we anticipated seeing a decrease both last year and this year as far as spending more than we received. Last year, we came in slightly above. It was very low, 200,000 to 400,000 above the revenues were above. This year, we're looking at a decrease, but if come in November, we see that that trend is not actually what we anticipate, we will need to take a look at that ending operating cash. We don't want to be too much higher than our target. We want to be using those monies for the betterment of our kids. So looking at 12 months complete, well, this is actually supposed to say 1 month complete. I think that's why I'm confused. 1 month, hardly anything has happened, right? We should be at 8%. For our revenues, we're looking at 33%. And again, I say this every single year, but our primary revenue is property tax, and we get those 2 times a year. So we get the majority of our funds twice a year. That's why our revenue percentage is so much higher in that first month. Expenditures, you'll see, is at 7%, exactly where we want it, slightly less, but very close to that projection. You'll see there the variances by month are much, much higher than they typically are. And that is because of the time of year. When I do the estimate, I have to estimate it by it's 1 of 12 months. Well, revenues and expenses don't happen frequently the exact same amount every single month. And so the first few months, you'll see those numbers are much different then once we get closer to our projections and we get an updated forecast, those numbers will kind of come down. So next month, I anticipate those will be much closer to what you're used to seeing, but that's what's going on there. They're also, I should say, based on last year's actuals. So if property tax came in higher in the first month this year than last year, that's going to move up those percentages. A couple of other things that we wanted to talk through. This is the start of a new year, and this is something we had talked about at the CAC committee meeting a while ago. We were doing a lot of reduction of expenditure type transactions. This is a very dense topic, somewhat hard to understand. So I put in here some examples, but there's also a quote from the Ohio Auditor of State's USAS manual. This is something we are allowed to do. So this is very much just a change in how we account. It's not something that we were doing wrong necessarily before, but it makes it a little bit more transparent if we switch to this new accounting method. So I wanted to make sure to tell everyone what this is, because what this will do is it will impact our per pupil amount. So the state report card gives us an amount that's per pupil. If we change how we're doing this accounting, it doesn't change anything logistically, but it will change the output number. And I'll explain a little bit more as we go through this. So you'll see there, the example that I'm giving you is our facility rentals. We currently rent all of our facilities out to our public. That's current board policy. We're required to do that, or any other area group that wants to rent our facilities if they're available. So here you see the user rents our facility, and they pay a rental fee for that. Right now, what we're doing, we see there's a rental fee that it costs money to use the building, right? So we're providing a rental fee, but we also have a rental fee for the custodian who has to be on staff. We also have a rental fee for the lights that have to be run, because both of those cost the district money. So we're charging a fee to cover all of our costs. Does that make sense? Right now, what we're doing with the custodial fee, the lighting charge, there's a stage manager, various expenses, is we are posting this receipt of cash to the expense code. So we're simply deducting the amount of money it costs for a custodian by the cash that the renter hands us. We put that as a negative expense to the custodial fee. So it shows as there's not an actual expense for that custodian. As opposed to if we post it to a receipt, it shows both the expense and both the receipt. Let me go to the next slide. Specifically, with the custodian, I used this example. If we are charging $36.38 per hour, the facility's rented for 5 hours, that gives us $181 that the renter is responsible for reimbursing us. If we're posting to the expense code, their year-to-date expenses, their wages, is $5,555 minus the $181 that we're receiving the rental cash fee for. So it shows at the end of the day that our actual expenses were $5,300. That's the current way we do it. How we're going to switch that is, instead of posting it as a negative expense, we're going to move that into a receipt code, so that the $5,555 stays as that's how much it costs for our custodians this year. But now we have an offsetting revenue code that shows how much we've collected in rental fees. And why is this important for us? So I already talked about this actually will change our per pupil costs, because we are spending that dollar amount for our pupils' behalf. But right now it's reducing those expenses and not showing it that way. So you'll see that the receipts are underposted. We don't show that as rental income, and we don't show it as expenses. Switching how we do this in accounting will show it both as a receipt and as an appropriate expense. It's very technical, but I wanted to let the board be aware this isn't a very significant change for us in the accounting world. Does anyone have questions on this? really the goal here is, if you ask me, how much do we make in facility rentals? I will be able to tell you, here's how much we make. Not, well, give me a second, there's this code and this code and this code, and I have to go figure out where all the negatives are and add them together to get you a total. This makes it much more transparent, much easier to read. The numbers are there and available. This is another example as far as what is an appropriate use, what we believe is the appropriate use of a reduction of expenditure. If I buy from Amazon $100 in supplies and then return $50 worth, that was not an expense that the district ever should have incurred. So we can post that receipt of money from Amazon right back to the expense, because it's not an actual expense. We never received the items. We didn't have to pay for them. It shouldn't show up as something we paid. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for going through that. It's very technical. Last month, we talked a little bit about our outstanding lunch fees, so I'm getting back the number here. As of the end of July, we had $66,930 in total outstanding lunch fees, and this is from the years 2016 through 2023. Of that, 2023 is still at $39,290. What we did this year, we did not do that last year, but I think it's historically been the practice. We posted those fees, they took it out of their lunch account, so every student starts at zero again. We took those and posted it to their student fee side. So now, as part of graduation requirements, as they're required to pay their fees, those lunch charges will be on their fee side. Again, starts them out at zero. Parents should still see that as a charge. So if they're updating the payments for their child, it will be there, but it will be in progress book as opposed to their lunch charges. And then I also had something in here, I talked a bit about this already, but we are asking to renew the permanent improvement levy. I think the one thing I did not mention that I had mentioned earlier is our last year numbers came in. We collected about 1.4 in property tax collections, and in expense-wise, we paid out about 1.5, 1.6. So we've used grant money for some of our expenses, a lot of safety grant money, as you are aware. We've also used debt issuances, so that's where some of those differences are getting coded. But if you recall, in the 10-year capital plan, we had that charted out so that we know exactly what year we're going to run out of funding if that is the case, which is not the case right now, assuming that the new agreement with Miami Valley Gaming comes in, because we're going to use that, earmark some of that for these capital projects. So that was the variance of last year, but we are using every penny of that money plus. And that's all I have.
Any questions? Karen? Just to run through the lists real quick, B is amended appropriations packet. C is amended certificate of estimated resources. D is a fund transfer. Anything you want to say there?
Yeah, so this is just a standard transfer where we send in to the state a request for Title I money, and they separate it out into Title IIA and Title I. We just move it all back into Title I and spend it as such.
Okay. E is donations. I want to thank the Lebanon Elks for their $1,300, but it brings up a good question. So then do you apply that $1,300 to the student fees kind of across the board? Or?
So usually we ask our donors to give us some guidance. So whatever they ask us to do, whether it's take a select group of the seniors. We had a lot of those right before graduation. I only want it to be seniors. They have to meet certain criteria. It typically is the families that have the highest balances, put it towards this number of students. There, it really just depends on the donor and how we apply that.
F is to approve the revised exempt salary schedule. G is activity purpose and budget statement.
So those are standard, you get these pretty much every month right now. As school is starting, all of the student activity groups submit budgets, and they give you the purpose for why that activity is going to occur.
Okay. Any questions on A through G?
Yep.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item H, a couple of then and nows. I need a motion to approve the attached then and now invoices.
So moved.
Second?
Anything you want to add here?
So again, we're seeing a lot more than and nows right now as we shift into SC View. One, they're great at catching them, but also as our new staff has come on board, we're trying to build that list of, here are the things that we're doing every year so that we can avoid some of these, and some we just miss. So we're building this and hoping to improve this over the next few months as we figure out that list of, here's the annual things happening, here's the monthly things happening.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Abstain?
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 8, public records requests. I don't think we have anything there. 9, policies. First, I need a motion to approve approve the first reading of the following policy, personal communication devices.
Moved.
Second?
Any discussion here?
So this policy is just taking a look at the use of cell phones in our buildings. And the only thing here that is changing is that our junior high is working to implement a no cell phone use during the school day. They can use it before and after, which is already what our elementary buildings do. So we're trying to align the policy to that. The grades 9 through 12, the policy still remains. They can have their phones, use them as will, but grades now K through 8 can only use cell phones before or after school.
And believe me, I heard about that the first day school was over. Moving on, there is no voting on this one as a first reading.
We
You need to vote still.
need
Oh,
to
we do
vote
need to
just-
vote. I'm sorry.
My fault on that.
That's all right. So roll call, please.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 10, other educational consent items. Need a motion to approve items A through C.
Moved.
Second?
Thank you. Just to read through these, A is approve the gifted education handbook for the 2023-24 school year. B is approve all Lebanon City School bus stops for the 23-24 school year. Have those, I'll come back once we do this. And C is approve the adoption for the text for AP Environmental Science, and the rest is there, so. My question is, have we settled our routes kind of, I know Isaac's not here, you may not know the answer to this, but,
I don't know for sure, but I know we've had more enrollments since they had the initials. So I know they're still working through the finals. I'm not sure if this included everything to Friday, right? But my guess is you'll have a few that will need modified as new
Okay.
enrollees come in.
thank you. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item 11 is personnel, so I need a motion to approve items A through P.
So move.
Second.
All right, let me run through these for our audience. A is resignations, B is employment pending background checks. C is substitute employment. D is supplementals. E is a board resolution for the non-licensed coaches. F is supplemental volunteer coaches. G is change of status. H is a list of volunteers. Again, thank you, all of you that volunteer out there for us. I is cooperating teacher stipend. J is game workers. K, Saturday school monitors. L is a leave of absence. M is a list of stipends for the school year. N, long-term certified substitute teachers. O is a list of tutors. And P is an extended day contract. Everybody a second to look at that.
Change of status, a lot of summertime spent on upgrading their steps.
And just to reiterate, there were a lot of volunteers in this packet, and it's very appreciated with all the school district. Mrs. Irvin, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Number 12, other business. We'll do these individually. I need a motion to approve item A, approve the graduation alliance agreement with Montgomery County Educational Service Center.
So moved.
Second?
Questions or comments on that one?
This is similar to an alternative school. The Warren County ESC has an alternative school. This is another similar program. So this just gives us the right to send a student who doesn't necessarily qualify for the ESC's alternate school to a different place for services.
Do you know how many seats we have there?
I do not.
Okay,
It's a great Isaac question.
sorry.
No worries.
Roll call, please. Maybe he'll text us the answer if we see it.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item B, amendment to Community Reinvestment Area Agreement.
So move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions?
So this is a very minor date change. It's all you're approving here.
Roll call, please.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item C, approve purchase agreement with the Mott's Group for design and construction of one infield artificial turf multipurpose athletic field for Lebanon City Schools.
Moved.
Second.
Any questions? This is, just so everybody knows, this is the turf field, the current youth football field at the high school facility to be turf for use by the youth football, lacrosse in the spring, soccer in the fall, and I believe we'll have some football games on there as well for junior high and high school students.
Will the band also be using that for practicing?
This will open up more turf for them to have.
That'd be
yeah.
great.
Is that for next school year?
This should be finished in time, as the schedule reads right now. Lacrosse will be playing on this in the spring, barring any obstacles that come up.
Okay.
Roll call, please. Or
Miss-
we did first and second, right?
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Motion carried.
D is approve the quote from Spartan Lighting Company for the installation of new lights at the athletic field located at Lebanon High School.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on this one?
It's on the same field, correct?
This is at the high, the visitor side lights today would encroach on the soccer field, so they had to be moved back, Mr. McCutcheon, about 20, 25 feet?
Yes.
I can't remember the number,
Yeah.
but, yeah, in order to make that a multi-purpose field, these lights had to be moved
Just on the one side then?
on the one side, yes. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Motion carried.
I do have an answer to A, approve the graduation alliance from Mr. Severs. We have an unlimited.
Somebody's watching at home.
We have an unlimited number of seats. This program allows the students to stay in our schools as a Lebanon student, but their academic coursework would be provided through an online provider with teachers and academic coaches.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
per the new policy, you don't have your phone out next to it.
I'm not in junior, just because I look like I'm that young, I'm not in junior high.
And finally, item 13, I need a motion to enter into executive session for the to consider the employment and compensation of public employee or official.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, we will not be voting on anything after we come out of that meeting. Everybody's welcome to hang out in the hallway for about an hour if you would like, or you can rest assured we will not be voting on anything, so. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Motion carried.